It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Breaking news this evening, activist Greta Thunberg is detained by Israel as a flotilla of boats attempts to deliver aid to Gaza. Israel's Navy says several vessels have been stopped and the passengers are safe and healthy. Also tonight, a company linked to the Tory peer Baroness Mone is ordered to repay more than £120 million to the government for breaching a pandemic contract. 7 members of a Rochdale grooming gang are jailed for using 2 girls as sex slaves.
At the centre of this case are 2 victims who as children were repeatedly abused, passed around and discarded by men who cruelly preyed on their vulnerabilities.
Also this evening, Reform UK accuses the Prime Minister of inciting violence after he tells Sky News that Nigel Farage's immigration policy is racist. And the world-renowned chimpanzee expert Dame Jane Goodall has died at the age of 91.
Those days were probably the best days of my life, days of discovery.
We'll also take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Good evening. We begin with breaking news. And Israel has detained the activist Greta Thunberg as she attempted to deliver aid to Gaza by sea. Israel says she's among a number of people on board several vessels, which it says have been stopped safely and are being transferred to an Israeli port. These live pictures show what is happening on board a number of other vessels taking part in the aid flotilla this evening. Earlier on, Israel called on them to change course from Gaza to the port of Ashdod, which is in the south of Israel, warning them that they were approaching an active combat zone. Let's go to Jerusalem. Our Middle East correspondent Adam Parsons is there for us. Adam, this isn't the first time this flotilla has attempted to take aid into Gaza, but certainly the first time Israel has responded in this way.
Well, this flotilla is very big. It's over 40 vessels. Greta Thunberg led a flotilla back in June, a much smaller version. She was arrested then. She's been arrested again tonight. And I imagine the same thing will happen, that she will be taken to Ashdod, detained, and then deported. The comparisons sort of stop there, though, because this flotilla is so much bigger, so much more sprawling, and has received a huge amount of international attention. At times, it has been flanked by 4 NATO warships coming from Italy, Spain, and Turkey. And tonight, there are protests in Italy and Turkey over the treatment of the flotilla, of the arrests. There are members I've seen in videos from this flotilla saying that when they're taken into detention, they will start a hunger strike. And of course, this, though, was a confrontation that was always going to happen. I think it was pretty much predetermined from the day that this flotilla left port in Barcelona with the intention of getting to Gaza to distribute humanitarian aid. I mean, the simple truth is that the amount of aid that they're carrying on these boats would be welcome, but it's not hugely significant in the great scheme of the hunger and tragedy that has afflicted Gaza. But I think this was about symbolism. This was about an outpouring of anger against Israel. So many times we heard the people on this flotilla accusing Israel of genocide. Equally predictable was Israel's reaction. They were never going to let any of these boats get anywhere near Gaza, and whatever they did was always likely to happen under cover of darkness. And today was the day when the flotilla were approaching the coastal waters. The dark came, and yes, a dozen, maybe 20 Israeli boats have intercepted this flotilla and are arresting people on board, blocking vessels. It's hard to know, to be blunt, how many of these vessels have been taken, what's happened to them, whether any are still trying to persist towards getting to Gaza, and how many have turned and tried to flee. At least one I know is trying to get back to Egypt. Greta Thunberg is in custody. She will not be the last who is detained tonight.
Adam in Jerusalem, thank you very much indeed. Next, the High Court has ruled that a company linked to the Conservative peer Baroness Mone must repay the government almost £122 million for breaching its contract to supply millions of surgical gowns during the pandemic. PPE MedPro, led by Baroness Moan's husband, was awarded contracts by the then Conservative government after she recommended it to ministers. Our business correspondent Paul Kelso has more.
It's May 2020, the first wave of COVID-19 has hit and the NHS is scrambling for PPE. In the House of Lords, a Conservative businesswoman, Baroness Michelle Moan, sees an opportunity. Using her political contacts, including former Minister Michael Gove, she recommends a company set up by her husband to a VIP fast lane for PPE procurement. PPE MedPro won more than £200 million worth of contracts, but 25 million sterile gowns were unusable. Almost 5 years on, the High Court has ruled the company was in breach of its contract and must repay £122 million. COVID family campaigners welcomed the ruling.
Really pleased. It really needs to be. It needs to have happened. That PPE and that money spent while we lost our loved ones and we couldn't visit our loved ones because there wasn't PPE to visit them while they were dying. And they've profited from this. They shouldn't have profited. They've taken taxpayers' money and it needs to all be reclaimed back.
The couple reacted furiously, insisting they are the victims. On social media, Baroness Moan called the ruling an establishment win, and in a statement, her husband, Doug Barrowman, said it was a travesty of justice. But a Labour government that pledged to pursue COVID profiteers was quick to celebrate.
This is an independent decision from the High Court, and I'm pleased with their decision because they should never have got their hands on this money. And during the pandemic, people made huge sacrifices, separated from their families and loved ones, and yet at the same time, people like Michelle Moan and her company, her husband's company, profited on the back of that misery.
For almost 3 years, Baroness Moan and Doug Barrowman denied any connection to PPE MedPro, while she continued to share their luxurious lifestyle online, only admitting their links after they were revealed by journalists.
I regret not saying to the press straight away, yes, I am involved. Yeah. And the government knew I was involved, and the emergency team, cabinet team knew I was involved.
If this ruling is clear, getting the money back may not be. Doug Barrowman and Michelle Moan have admitted making more than £60 million in profits from PPE MedPro's COVID contracts. But a day before this judgment was handed down, the company filed for administration with assets of less than £700,000. The judge has given it just 2 weeks to pay in full, and the Department of Health here has instructed lawyers to try and help it recover every penny. The National Crime Agency is also investigating PPE MedPro's COVID deals, and some of the couple's assets, including bank accounts in the Isle of Man, have been frozen. Michelle Moan, the lingerie entrepreneur who reached the Lords, remains a peer, but still faces a standards investigation. Hers a tale of rags to riches, accumulated at the taxpayer's expense. Paul Kelso, Sky News.
7 members of a grooming gang in Rochdale have been jailed for a combined total of more than 170 years for using 2 teenage girls as sex slaves. The ringleader, 65-year-old Mohammed Zahid, was sentenced to 35 years behind bars. The judge said that the girls had been humiliated, degraded and then discarded. And he said both girls had also been seriously let down by those whose job it was to protect them. Our North of England correspondent Caterina Vitozzi has more.
Do you recognise that female?
No.
The judge called him the grooming gang's boss man, who's never shown any remorse. Today, Mohammed Zahid was jailed for 35 years for grooming 2 teenage girls, raping them and passing them around for sex with others back in the early 2000s. The court here in Manchester heard how Mohammed Zahid had a market stall in Rochdale where he sold underwear. It's where he would meet his victims, giving them free underwear and then things like cigarettes, alcohol and drugs, grooming them and building an expectation from them that they had to have sex, not only with him, but his friends. 6 other members of the gang were sentenced alongside Zahid for multiple counts of rape and assault. None of them have ever admitted what they did. In this police footage, 2 of the men turn against each other, accusing the other of a brutal rape of one of the victims in a car, an assault that was filmed and used to blackmail her. At the time, the 2 victims were just 13. both highly vulnerable, known to social services, in and out of care. The judge said the men exploited that vulnerability and used the girls as sex slaves. Outside court, statements were read out on their behalf.
My childhood was taken away from me by these men. I should have been out with friends, playing in parks and being innocent, hanging around on the streets, enjoying my childhood and creating memories I would be able to cherish and look back at as an adult. However, my life was far from that due to these men. Instead, it was based on being taken to addresses by men, being plied with alcohol and drugs, raped and then being made to feel worthless. I have felt shame and guilt all my life for what these men did. I still suffer with social anxiety. I am unable to trust anyone and I cannot take people at face value. I have no expectations of anyone.
During the trial, social services and the police apologised for past failings, for not acting when the victims told authorities what was happening.
As a country, we still have a long way to go to put victims at the heart of these cases because they always suffer the most. The quicker we can do these things, the more effectively first-time interviews they do, then the easier the toll is on their mental health. Everything that can be done to help them should be done.
In court, the judge addressed Zahid directly. He said at the time the victims were young girls. They would have been terrified at what was happening to them. You, Mohammed Zahid, he said, simply didn't care. Katerina Vitozzi, Sky News in Manchester.
So Keir Starmer has told Sky News that he does not believe Nigel Farage or Reform voters are racist, but the party's immigration policy is. In his speech to the Labour Party conference yesterday, the Prime Minister claimed that Mr Farage hates Britain, prompting a furious response. The PM has been speaking to our political editor, Beth Rigby.
The Prime Minister in Liverpool fighting back. How are you feeling?
Good.
Yeah? And with a clear opponent in his sights. Prime Minister, do you admire Nigel Farage as a politician?
I think he's a formidable politician and, of course, I think he's the opponent as we go into the next election.
Drawing his battle lines against Reform UK, taking aim at Nigel Farage's plan to deport people who currently have indefinite leave to remain in the UK.
I think the policy is racist. I think it's immoral. I think that's a very dangerous place for us to go as a country, and it goes against everything that I believe in.
Do you think Nigel Farage is a racist?
No, nor do I think Reform voters are racist. They're concerned about things like our borders. They're frustrated about the pace of change. So I'm not for a moment suggesting that they are racist.
Do you think that he is caught in racist with this policy?
Well, look, I'm not going to start bandying...
well, you called it a racist policy.
The policy...
So is he caught in racist?
Well, look, I'm not going to get into labelling the man. I'm talking about the ideas and what he stands for.
A Prime Minister who wants to take aim at Farage, but not his supporters, as he looks to close the growing gap between Labour and Reform, and trying to walk the line too when it comes to President Trump. Donald Trump said under Sadiq Khan, London is being driven towards Sharia law, is it?
No, of course it's not.
Okay.
That's nonsense.
Isn't it that racist as well?
Well, it's nonsense.
Isn't it racist to accuse a Muslim mayor of driving London to Sharia law?
I'm not going to start down the road of discussing whether things said by others are racist or not.
Well, you just discussed Nigel Farage having a racist policy, so you literally are discussing that.
I have been really clear that the idea that in London we're introducing Sharia law is rubbish.
Is it racist?
It's rubbish.
Does it not bother you when he says things that you know are not truthful and you won't actually call it out?
Well, what matters to me is that the relationship between the US and the UK on defence and security and intelligence is the closest relationship in the world. It is what helps to keep us safe in this country. And therefore, of course, I work closely with the United States President. Of course, I have a good personal relationship with him.
The Prime Minister confident he can weather the storm. Prime Minister, you will lead Labour into the next general election.
I will lead Labour into the next general election.
Keir Starmer came to Liverpool to answer his critics, finding passion and purpose as he pitted his version of Britain against that of Nigel Farage. This a dividing line that has united the party and given the Prime Minister some much-needed momentum. He's set the battle lines into the next general election, but the much bigger and harder task is delivering on the renewal he says Britain so badly needs. The Labour government leaves Liverpool in stronger voice and brighter spirits. But the bigger landscape bleak as the party eyes a difficult budget and elections ahead. Starmer's battle only just beginning. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Liverpool.
Nigel Farage's deputy, Richard Tice, told Sky News earlier this evening that Keir Starmer's language, calling on people to fight, is inciting violence towards Reform's leader.
We believe in free speech, and yet there's rough and tumble. But there is such a thing as there's a difference between free speech and inciting violence. And as far as we're concerned, the Prime Minister crossed the line. That's a matter of judgment. That's our judgment. And let me tell you and your viewers, if anything happens physically to any of our Reform activists or elected councillors, frankly, I will hold the Prime Minister personally responsible.
Let's go live to Downing Street. Our chief political correspondent, John Craig, is there for us this evening. Evening to you, John. There are Labour MPs taking to social media this evening saying they think Reform are a bit rattled.
Well, this Reform's certainly trying to stoke up this row. The Prime Minister, in one of his other broadcast interviews at the end of the Labour Party conference, flatly denied the charges being made by Richard Tice and Nigel Farage and indeed Zia Youssef in another interview on Sky News. Pat McFadden, a senior cabinet minister, a loyal, close ally of the Prime Minister, said they're protesting because they don't want to defend their policy of throwing out of the country people on indefinite leave to remain. But the Reform UK are claiming, Mr Tice claimed it in his Sky News interview, that Mr Farage's security has been downgraded by 75% by the government. Well, the Home Office say that's nonsense, nothing to do with them. But the claim was also made in his interview by Zia Youssef, who said that the donors for to the Reform UK party had come in and provided funding for security. And he claimed he had been with Mr Farage when there had been attempts to attack him. So, if anything, this row is going to get more heated and more angry because Reform are determined to keep it going, and the government is adamant that the claims being made about the Prime Minister inciting violence against the Reform UK leader are baseless.
John, thank you. The senior police officer who's in charge of preventing violence against women and girls says she's concerned that political argument around asylum seekers is distracting from the real threat to women's safety. Helen Millichap, Deputy Assistant Commissioner at the Metropolitan Police, told Sky News the real threat comes from a multitude of places. A warning, this piece from Sky's Molly Malone contains references to suicide.
For much of the summer, there was protest, as communities made clear they're unhappy with levels of immigration. There was also this, as an asylum seeker was convicted for the sexual assault of a 14-year-old girl in Epping.
I'm not far right, I'm just right, and we have to protect women and girls.
And with the protest came the politics.
Young, undocumented males who pose a risk to women and girls.
This is a border security crisis, but it is also a public safety crisis, especially for women and girls.
Now, the officer responsible for policing violence against women and girls has expressed concern about the conversation.
You hear a lot about small boats and asylum seekers and the threat to women and girls, and certainly that is how many people are feeling in communities at the moment. What do you make of that political conversation?
I'm concerned that the message could get missed in the current political discourse, which is where does the real threat come from? It's from a multitude of things. And as we know, for sexual offences and for domestic abuse, the vast majority of perpetrators are known to the victim, so I don't want anything to distract from a clear and good understanding of where the threat overall is.
we're looking to stop further domestic abuse.
That comes as police warn of fears about funding, that work like this in Manchester, a new pilot to improve protection checks in domestic abuse cases, can be effective but comes at a cost, while the sector in general is said to be struggling. In a letter from the Victims Commissioner to the Justice Secretary and shared with Sky News, Baroness Newlove said she's concerned that support for victims is slipping behind other priorities, that victim services are financially at breaking point, with cuts that are directly impacting victims' safety.
Without it, I don't know where I'd be, completely honest with you. I have attempted suicide.
Ria was raped when she was a teenager. It wasn't until years later that she sought counselling, but faced months on a waiting list. When help came, she says it was a lifeline.
You have that kind of exhale that you're going to get the help that you need. Me personally, it was an a realisation, I should say, that I can't do this by myself. I've been trying for a number of years and not necessarily getting anywhere.
The chief executive at this rape crisis centre in London says the sector is struggling to meet increasing demand, while 3 centres have shut in the last year because of a lack of funding.
Can you just describe the state of services like this?
Dire, crisis point, broken. Quite frankly, people are dying.
The government told us they inherited a £22 billion black hole, but say they remain resolute in their mission to halve violence against women and girls. Their upcoming strategy will set out how they'll protect the most vulnerable. There appear to be challenges and concerns everywhere, a system and a sector under pressure, with a warning that victims of crime are paying the price. Molly Malone, Sky News.
If you are affected by that story, you can contact the Samaritans. Their number is 116123. Call them anytime, of course, or email joe@samaritans.org. Or if you suspect you're being abused and need to speak to someone, there are people who can help with that too. The National Domestic Violence Helpline is on 0808 2000 247. Next, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, has apologised for the reprehensible and completely unacceptable behaviour of some officers at Charing Cross Police Station in London. It comes after 9 officers were suspended over allegations of using excessive force on prisoners and making discriminatory and misogynistic comments. The alleged incidents are said to have occurred while those involved were both on and off duty between August 2024 and January this year.
It shows a corrupt group of officers engaging in misogynistic, racist, bragging about use of force, utterly contemptible behaviour that shows a disrespect for the people of London. I understand the people of London are going to be really upset by this. Some it will cause to question the trust they hold the police in. And we depend on that trust so much because without it we can't succeed in keeping them safe.
At least 36 people have been killed and more than 200 others were injured when scaffolding inside a church under construction in the north of Ethiopia started to collapse. Witnesses say many worshippers had climbed up the scaffolding to see a ceiling mural in the church when the structure gave way during a service this morning. The US government has shut down for the first time in nearly 7 years, with Donald Trump threatening to lay off a lot of people, in his words. It comes after rival Democrats and Republicans refused to budge in their standoff over healthcare spending.
We're going to do everything that we can over the coming weeks, if the shutdown lasts that long, to ensure that people get the essential services that they need, despite the fact that Chuck Schumer has shut down the federal government. It's not going to be perfect because we are in a government shutdown. We are going to have to lay some people off if the shutdown continues. We don't like that. We don't necessarily want to do it, but we're going to do what we have to keep the American people's essential services continuing to run.
Now, internet services appear to be being restored in Afghanistan tonight after a 2-day nationwide blackout in the country. Aid agencies have warned that shutdown could have far-reaching consequences for the delivery of aid, access to healthcare and the education of girls. Our Asia correspondent Cordelia Lynch is in the Afghan capital, Kabul, and sent this.
There was little sign of life at Kabul International Airport. The runway, eerily quiet. Outside, relatives waiting for family members that never came. This, the chaos and confusion created by a 48-hour internet shutdown that came without warning.
All our flight schedules depend on the internet. We have passengers, both local and international, who all depend on the internet, as their flight bookings, seat confirmation and cancellation all depend on the internet. It's the only way they contact us.
Telecommunications were also cut across Afghanistan, with no one able to use their phones. The capital, a city moving, but beneath the surface, struggling to function. Fast connectivity is trumpeted on billboards everywhere. But on the ground, people were plunged into sudden darkness, unable to transfer money, and Afghans abroad unable to send any back to loved ones. Girls over 12 banned from school who've been learning online were also cut off. The Taliban gave no official explanation for the blackout, but in recent weeks they've imposed internet restrictions in certain provinces, aimed, they say, at preventing immorality. We asked the Ministry of Communications and Information Technology for a statement, but they didn't provide one. With rumours swirling on the streets, frustration set in.
My demand is that mobile service should be restored immediately, as our business and daily life depends on it. Restoration of mobile service and internet will help our business run smoothly. Our business is stuck at the moment.
We cannot contact our families and friends abroad. We demand the government solve these problems.
But by late afternoon, they got their wish. Well, it's the third day of this shutdown, and suddenly I've got signal back on my phone, and we've been driving around Kabul, and it looks like others have theirs too. Lots of people excitedly looking at their phones because there were no guarantees. People had no idea if and when things might be restored. There was no official statement from the Taliban either. It's created a lot of uncertainty. Many in the country completely caught off guard. In a country where individual freedoms have been increasingly peeled back, activists warned of the harm to ordinary Afghans.
For a poor country like Afghanistan right now, the amount of money that the banks lost, the amount of money that the airlines lost, the amount of money that, everybody lost is like, oof, it's really horrible. This has become like the weapons against the people of Afghanistan. It can be used anytime, at anywhere, and anyway. And that's not right.
We still don't know exactly why or how the shutdown happened. But after the Taliban's dramatic takeover more than 4 years ago, it's shown once again just how quickly the course of this country can shift. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News, Kabul, Afghanistan.
Dame Jane Goodall, considered the world's leading expert on chimpanzees, has died at the age of 91. She revolutionised understanding of primate behaviour and won the trust of the free-living chimps she studied in parts of Africa. Alice Porter looks back at her life.
Those close contacts with Flo and her family were very important to my own development.
She opened the door into their secret world.
It had long been thought that we were the only creatures on Earth that used and made tools. Man the toolmaker is how we were defined. And here was David Greybeard using a tool.
Before Jane Goodall's revolutionary discovery, it was thought only humans were intelligent enough to use tools. Speaking to Sky News only a few months ago, she explained how chimpanzees weren't so different to people.
I was the first person to study chimpanzees in the wild anywhere. Nobody studied them before. And so just about every observation I made was new and surprising. The fact that they can use and make tools, how their behavior is so like ours. And those days were probably the best days of my life, days of discovery.
Her journey to becoming a renowned primatologist was not an easy one. Unable to afford university, aged 26, she arrived in Kenya with no scientific training. But she set up a chimpanzee reserve in Tanzania, winning the trust of primates and the scientific community at a time when there were few women in her field.
She immersed herself in their society. She sat on the forest floor in Tanzania as part of that group of chimpanzees. She knew them all as individuals. She knew their personalities. She watched them grow and mature and watched those personalities change. And as a consequence of that, she was able to record things which had probably been glimpsed before, but certainly never documented in the way that she was able to do so.
30 years after arriving in Africa, she said she couldn't protect chimpanzees without addressing the disappearance of their habitat. She set up the Jane Goodall Institute, becoming a conservationist, passionately speaking out about climate change.
As we eat more and more meat, billions of animals are tortured in these factory farms. And not only that, but they have to be fed. So huge areas are cleared to grow the grain to feed them.
She tirelessly advocated until the end. Jane Goodall was in the US for a speaking tour when she died, aged 91. A campaigner, an inspiration, a pioneer. Alice Porter, Sky News.
That was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. Tonight, I'm joined by a pair of big beasts, the political commentator Adam Bolton and the Daily Mirror columnist Kevin Maguire. Among the stories we'll be discussing this evening, the story on the front of The Guardian and many other pages as well about tonight's top story here on Sky. The headline, PPE firm with link to Moan ordered to repay £122 million. We'll be right back.